Okay, we're starting the urinary system, and it is really important when we're discussing the urinary system that you keep at least some of the information from your lab activity in mind. Because as I'm discussing how the kidney actually cleans your blood and regulates your blood pressure and modulates your body's pH, I'll be using those terms proximal convoluted tubule and nephron loop and afferent arteriole. And the stronger the picture in your head is, the more this will make sense. Let's start with just the basics. With the basics, the urinary system, if we look at it large scale, we'll see that people are generally born with two kidneys. The one on the left side is up a little bit higher than the one on the right side because on the right side, the liver occupies a lot of territory. Each one of the kidneys is responsible for making urine, right? Once the fluid has left the kidney, you're not making urine anymore. You're just storing urine. Urine will be sent from the kidney that made it down to the urinary bladder where it will be stored by going through a tube called the ureter. The ureter. The ureter is going to carry urine from a kidney down to the urinary bladder. And then from the urinary bladder, if we want to send urine to the outside world, which we generally do several times a day, we will send it out through the urethra. So it helps me to remember that there are two kidneys and each one has a ureter. And the word ureter has got 1, 2 E's in it, but there's only one urethra and from the urinary bladder to the outside world, and there's only one E in urethra. So if you're like me and ureter and urethra sound a lot alike, that's how I tell them apart personally. Now, each kidney is only about the size of a bar of soap. And yet, at any given time, they hold like an incredible amount of your blood. As a matter of fact, the statistic that I heard is so shocking that I don't even think I will tell you because I really want to double check the number. But there is a lot of blood in your kidneys at any point in time. And the kidneys are responsible for not just cleaning your blood, but also regulating your blood pressure, regulating the pH of your blood, regulating the osmolarity of your blood, all of that just in those kidneys. And those kidneys, even though they're small, they use about 6% of the calories that you burn up every day, at least basal metabolic rate, because what they are doing requires active transport, and active transport requires ATP. All right, so just more details about the kidneys. The kidneys have got like 3 different areas. Generally here in AP 120, we just think about the renal cortex. The renal cortex is this area right here, okay? The renal cortex goes from the outside part, the renal capsule. I may never get this pen. The outside part, the renal capsule, down to here, okay? Now, that renal cortex, there is a lot of important stuff that happens there. So make sure you understand the things that are out there in the renal cortex. Now, from these blood vessels right here, we'll learn the names of them in a second, down to the end of the renal papillas. This area is called the renal medulla. Medulla, either one, okay? Cortex and medulla or medulla. And then there's another area that you might bump into on the lab practical. This area right here, where you see the renal artery going in and the renal veins coming out and the ureters coming out, okay? Where all this stuff is going in and out, that area is known as the renal hilum. I don't see that word, hilum, so I will write it for you. Renal 8, that's supposed to be an H. It's kind of a fancy looking H and a weird looking I. Hilum, renal hilum. That's frightening, okay? So we will be talking about the blood vessels in a second. The uh, renal cortex is separated from the renal medulla by blood vessels that are called the arcuate arteries and veins. So arcuate. And they're called arcuate because an arc is kind of like a rainbow, okay? And you can see how these arteries right here, these right here, they make little arcs, little arches over the top of these structures that are called renal pyramids, and those are the arcuate arteries. The arcuate artery is red, the arcuate vein is blue. Remember, everywhere except for the lungs and where the lungs connect to the heart, everywhere else, arteries are red and veins are blue, including here in the kidneys. So the arcuate artery is red, and it makes like a little arch over the top of the renal pyramid. Okay? So what is the job of the kidneys? The functions of the kidneys are, most people would just say, oh, it's to get rid of waste. Okay, yeah, that's one of the things that the kidneys do. They get rid of waste. They filter through the plasma of your blood. They decide what to keep and what to let go, and they do eliminate waste in that way. But that's not the only thing they do. Remember, all of your blood fluids need to be isotonic to the ideal situation inside of each one of your cells. What part of your body makes sure that your plasma is isotonic? It's the kidneys. You know, on any given day, you don't think to yourself, oh no, if I have one more glass of water, my blood will become hypotonic and all my red blood cells will pop. No, you never have to worry about that because of your kidneys. The total volume of your blood, and we remember that blood volume is one of the main factors in blood pressure. That's being controlled here by the kidneys. And also pH. The pH of the blood is between 7.35 and 7.45. Yes, there are buffers in blood. They help. Yes, breathing can help as well. But by far the most powerful way of regulating the pH of your body needs to stay in that narrow level is right here at the kidneys. And then the kidneys also secrete the hormones renin. Renin is not just a hormone, it's also an enzyme. And renin helps regulate blood pressure. I think we'll be reviewing that, but that was in the cardiovascular system. And making erythropoietin. Remember, erythropoietin, that is the hormone whose target cells are in the bone marrow. And when there's more erythropoietin, your body makes more red blood cells. What does this do? Causes your bone marrow to make more red blood cells. But we will be talking a lot about eliminating waste. And one of the waste products that can really only be eliminated by the kidneys are these nitrogenous wastes. Nitrogenous wastes is just a fancy way of saying these are waste molecules that have nitrogen in them. And the only efficient way of getting rid of them is to put them in your urine. So that's the job of the kidneys. Now, urea right here, pink arrow, that is by far the most abundant of the nitrogenous waste. Where do we get urea from? Well, urea is being made by the kidneys from these molecules, ammonia. Ammonia gets released every time one of your proteins gets broken down into amino acids. And if those amino acids, instead of being used to build another protein, they're going to get fed to the mitochondria, then an ammonia molecule needs to be removed from the amino acid for it to be good food for the mitochondria. So the more protein we eat, the more ammonia our body will make. Now, ammonia is super toxic, very toxic. So we can't tolerate very much ammonia in the bloodstream. And luckily for us, as that ammonia is in our bloodstream, as it goes through the liver will take those ammonias and put them together to create the molecule urea. So if you look here, ammonia is NH3, and you can see here's NH2 attached to a carbon. Yeah. So the liver makes urea out of ammonia, so we don't have to worry about having a lot of ammonia in our bloodstream. By the way, once urea is in urine and now it's maybe in a baby's diaper, if it stays there for very long, then bacteria will find the urea and they will break this covalent bond, because bacteria will use that for their own energy, and they will release ammonia. And that's why a new diaper smells like pee, but it doesn't smell like ammonia. But diapers sitting around in a diaper pail for a while will get smelling stronger and stronger as the urea gets turned back to ammonia. And that's a super strong smell and very dangerous if it's in your body. Right? What are the other nitrogenous wastes? Let's look at this one, creatinine. Creatinine is the byproduct of the breakdown, catabolism, of creatine phosphate. We didn't talk about creatine phosphate, but in your muscles, your skeletal muscle, there is a molecule called creatine phosphate, and it hangs on to a phosphorus to make it more efficient for your mitochondria to make ATP. So the more muscle a person has, the more creatine phosphate they have. And the more creatine phosphate they have, the more creatinine will be made in a given day. So the two blood tests that are pretty much on every blood test you've ever taken that check for how well your kidneys are working are these two, creatinine and urea. Urea is often written in a blood test as BUN, which stands for blood urea nitrogen. So if you've got any old blood tests sitting around, copies of them around the house, if you look, you'll see urea or BUN and creatinine on almost every blood test you've taken. This one, uric acid is different. It comes from the metabolism of RNA and DNA, and the buildup of uric acid is to blame for a very painful inflammation of joints, very often toe joints, which is known as gout. And we won't be talking about it anymore. When a person has lost more than 2/3 or maybe 3/4 of their kidney function, the levels of urea and creatinine will start to build up in the bloodstream, along with other waste products from the body. And at that point, we will say that a person is in kidney failure. Most people are born with 2 functioning kidneys. And if you've got 2 kidneys and they're healthy, you literally have 4 times as much kidney power as you absolutely need to get the job done. So a patient's levels of urea and creatinine generally don't start to creep up until they have lost more than 2/3 of their kidney processing ability. We'll get back to that in a second. But before we do, I want to let you know that there will be several lecture exam questions that will test your ability to know these tracings, okay? So the tracings were reviewed in your lab material. You should be able to trace the path of filtrate flow through the kidney and also the path of blood flow through the kidney. And we will start with those concepts at the beginning of our next video.